So I think it's pretty clear that I'm an astrologer, and I've been involved with it for a really long time. And I've been involved with different aspects of it. The way that it's used now is a very prescribed way. But before, it was used in a very global way. It was used to answer specific questions. It was used to choose auspicious times. It was used to predict world events, and then, of course, it was also used to talk about people's lives, which is primarily what it's used for now. But at this particular time that the story starts, we're going to talk about my tattoo, my first tattoo, that is. Um, I was using it in a form of what I would call astrological magic. So I was using something called electional astrology. Electional means to choose. So that's the art of using astrology to choose an auspicious time or a successful time to either start something or to do something. But I was using it to create magical talismans in order to help. So talismans, planetary talismans. So let's say I had a problem in my chart with Venus, who's the goddess of love and marriage and whatever else. You could create a chart for when to create a talisman to help you. So it was all about kind of working with astrology and magic together. And there was a man by the name of Christopher Warnock who was the first real kind of expert in that realm and kind of bringing it back. And he's still really well known. And I was involved in a group with him where people were constantly saying, "Hey, I want to make this. Here's an election." Election being the chart. Here's an election for this. I want to make this type of talisman. So I decided that I wanted a tattoo, and I wanted a tattoo of Mercury. And so I found a talisman, design that I liked, and I went about creating a chart for it. Showed it to Chris, and he said, "Hey, don't use that chart. Use this chart instead." And so I now had a specific time and day, etc., in which I would do this, get this thing done. So now all I needed to do was find a tattoo artist or figure out where I was going to have it done. So maybe a few weeks after this, I think, let's say it was I had it done in May. This might have been April or March or April. So a week or two or whatever after, I go out with a friend and her toddler and her son who's like 3 years old. And we go to this Thai restaurant, one of my very favorites in San Francisco. And at this time, San Francisco was full of freaks and weirdos and and gays and lesbians and everything. I mean, it was a fantastic place in that respect, and very sexual, very out there, very just a very expressive place. Lots of tattoos and piercings and all that kind of stuff. So we're having dinner, and I notice at some point I look up at the door. I'm facing the door, and I look up at the door, and there's this man that has just walked in, and he's covered from it doesn't have him on his face, but he's got the tattoo sleeves, and he's piercings everywhere and tattoos. And as I look at him, I think that he looks familiar, and I wonder why. I know I probably never met him, but why does this man look familiar? So he comes, he sits down maybe two booths away from us, and we're finishing our dinner. Meanwhile, Tucker, the little boy who's in his high chair, he is finished with dinner. He gets up out of his high chair. He grabs some food, rather, he grabs some food from his plate. He gets up out of the high chair, and he goes over directly to the table where the tattooed guy is and starts throwing food at him. And so I used to kind of take care of him for this friend of mine. So I immediately run over and I'm like, "Oh, Tucker, my God, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm so, so sorry. I'm so sorry for this, but, I don't know why he's doing this." And I said, "But, I'm sorry. I just need to say something. You look really familiar." And he's like, "You look really familiar." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a musician. What do you do?" And he goes, "I'm a tattoo artist." And I was like, "Oh, ho, ho, ho. I have found my tattoo artist." Now, why is this such an interesting story? It's because the talisman that I was creating was for the planet Mercury. And one of the things that Mercury represents, or he represents many things, but one of the things he represents is young children. Also, Mercury is the trickster of the planets. Mercury is one of the myths about Hermes or Mercury when he was born. Is right after he was born, the first thing he does is go and steal one of Apollo's cows and hide it from him. And so this whole issue of tricksterism, a child who is a trickster, a clever trickster, is part of that, the profile of Mercury. And sure enough, this child who was indeed, he was a really clever little kid. This child who was a clever trickster brought me to my tattoo artist, and the tattoo artist allowed me to do the whole thing as a Mercury ceremony, at starting at exactly the time that that the chart indicated, and all of those interesting things.